As we return to in-person learning, we don't need to have business as usual. Today's guest, author David Bott, shares with us 3 things educators should debate as we return to in-person learning. Today's show is sponsored by Advancement Courses. Stay tuned at the end of the show to hear how I decided what professional development course I'm taking this summer.
Welcome to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast, hosted by author, educator, speaker, and mom, the Cool Cat teacher, Vicki Davis.
So today we're talking with David Bott, the Associate Director of the Institute of Positive Education, and the co-author with Dr. Jerry Cooney-Horvath of the book, 10 Things Schools Get Wrong and How We Can Get Them Right. Now, David, Jared and I talked about 5 things we need to get right as we move back to in-person learning, but you and I are going to talk about 3 things we should debate as we return to in-person learning. So what's your first thing that you think that we need to just sit down as educators and get in that conference room and have some conversations about?
Yeah, thanks, Vicki. Thanks for the opportunity. Obviously, the first one is coffee, because we just need to get high quality coffee. No, that's not the first, although that is important.
It is important these days. Yes, it is.
But no, the first one, I think, Vicki, is mindset. And this is a chapter 5 in our book, which has caused quite a lot of interest, I think, and debate in the field. And, mindset theory is, in my opinion, probably the theory that's got more traction in mainstream education than any other that's emerged out of positive psychology or really the human sciences over the last maybe 10 or 20 years. Carol Dweck's mindset theory is a dominant theory in mainstream education. And I think the reason it's so dominant is unfortunately not because it's as impactful as we think it is. In fact, the research that we have now of trying to understand really how impactful is mindset as an intervention shows us that, unfortunately, it has very close to zero, and in fact, statistically zero impact as an intervention on learning outcomes, on academic performance.
So you're saying growth and fixed mindset and all that conversation has basically zero impact on academic performance?
On academic learning, unfortunately. So let me say this, mindset as a concept is absolutely essential for learning. No human can learn anything unless they believe that they can grow, right? So you have to believe that to get better at playing the trumpet, you have to believe that practice will help me improve, right? So mindset is essential for learning. Unfortunately, what's happened in the literature, and in part, I think it's Carol Dweck's fault, there's been a conflation or an exaggeration or overhyping of the impact of mindset on academic grades and academic learning. So mindset is essential for learning, but it doesn't cause learning. It doesn't cause grades. It doesn't cause increased academic performance. What mindset does is, in its own self, causes students, teachers, humans to want to practice. And then once we practice, we need to practice very effectively. And we have to have passion, and we have to have grit, and we have to have hope, and we have to have good coaching. And there's a whole range of factors that mediate the impact of mindset on actual learning. So what the literature actually shows is that overall, the effect size of mindset as an intervention, a learning intervention, is 0.02 or 0.08 actually, which is statistically nothing. So we're not saying that mindset's a bad thing, but mindset is one small part of the overall toolkit of an educator, and we should not be relying on it as the silver bullet that's going to fix education or enhance grades in some radical way.
And I want to mention that you're the Associate Director of the Institute of Positive Education. So it's not that you're against mindset. You're just saying the data doesn't support a massive emphasis. Perhaps you think maybe we've overemphasized mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the problem, Vicki. Yeah, growth mindset is essential for learning. A fixed mindset is disastrous for learning, disastrous for wellbeing. We have to be ensuring our students have a growth mindset for the sake of the mindset itself. We should not be trying to enhance growth mindset to optimize learning, because it just doesn't work that way. In fact, Carol Dweck's own research in 2019, the National Study of Learning Mindset, 12,000 ninth graders across the US, huge study, found exactly the same thing, that overall mindset has a close to zero impact on learning in mainstream schooling. It does have some quite important, significant impact on the lowest performing students, and in some very kind of disadvantaged socioeconomic situations, mindset as an intervention can can statistically enhance grades. But in a normal mainstream educational setting, it's not as impactful as many educators think it is. So it is a small, important part of the toolkit of educators.
Fascinating. Now, I could just talk all day about mindset, but we have two more. What's your second area that you think that educators need to debate?
Yeah. The second thing I'd love to share with you, Vicky, is 21st century learning skills. These the C21 skills of creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. Now, those 4 C21 skills are important. And no one's going to debate that. The creativity is a good thing. It's an important skill for humans to have. But I don't know how many educators appreciate that those 21st century skills were created in a hotel over a breakfast kind of meeting in Texas a few years ago, where multinational American companies, including Microsoft and Oracle and a couple of others, got together and decided what they felt the workforce needed. It was literally a hotel in Dallas, Texas in 2002. They kind of sat around, decided these were the 4 kind of major skills that the workforce needed. The American kind of education department got involved, excited about this, and suddenly it's a worldwide phenomenon, these 21st century skills. Now, the 2 problems with this is, firstly, those 4 skills are not inherently transferable. So when we're teaching creativity in a classroom setting, or we're trying to teach collaboration, unfortunately, humans are inherently bad at transferring skills into other contexts. So just because we're teaching kids creativity skills in a classroom does not necessarily translate into the real world. In fact, we see a lot of literature, a lot of evidence suggesting it doesn't transfer at all. So that's the first problem with this whole concept. From my perspective, Vicky, and I'm passionate about wellbeing in schools, my problem with creativity and collaboration and critical thinking and communication is, why those 4? Now, they're essential, but what about forgiveness? What about integrity? What about compassion? What about hope? What about love? What about tolerance? What about, and so another problem with focusing, with laser focus on these 4 specific, arguably arbitrary or, specifically chosen skills is where the opportunity cost, I guess, is that we're not focusing in the same way on forgiveness and kindness and empathy and compassion, hope, trust, So there are 2 major problems. One is the over-focus on these things, and then they don't necessarily transfer into the real world anyway.
Let me ask you this. So I teach a digital film class, and I consider that actually one of the most real world classes I teach, because they learn how to collaborate on a film set. They have these big, massive shoots and that sort of thing. And I have sort of noticed, I think because it's more real world, that they seem to be able to take it. Is it that the classroom is so disconnected from the real world that it doesn't transfer? Or is it that you have these domains of behavior that, this is a school, when I go to a work, it's just not going to be the same place. And so it doesn't matter what it is in a school, it's not going to transfer.
Yeah, it is about the context. So it's the contextual transfer that humans tend to be very poor at. Learning a mathematics problem. You get young children to learn some basic mathematical skills, even just addition or basic multiplication with numbers. And then you change those numbers to words and you create a word-based mathematical problem. And students that are successful with numbers suddenly can't do the same mathematical process because the words have been changed. The context has been changed slightly differently. So transference of skills is not an automatic process. It has to be very consciously and deliberately applied. And even when we deliberately can try and contextualize skills, it's very hard for a human. We've got some really funny footage of Roger Federer, one of the best tennis players ever, trying to play royal tennis, which is a precursor to modern day tennis. And even his skills in a very similar context don't really apply, and Michael Jordan trying to change from one ball sport, basketball, one of the best, maybe the best ball sports person ever, and tries to play baseball and fails miserably. Even physical human skill sets don't necessarily transfer into different contexts. And it's absolutely the same with cognitive skills as well. They don't transfer effectively when the context changes. So your example, Vicky, where we can create in the educational environment, where we can create contexts that are more real world, we're much more likely to have that transferring into the real world when students try and apply those or transfer those skills out.
Oh, wow. We could continue to discuss that one as well. So what is our third?
Yeah, third one I'd love to speak to you about is purpose. And this is a debate that we want educators debating this. because they already are. What is the purpose of education? Maybe a better way of putting it is, what is the narrative that we are basing our day-to-day interactions, our understanding of schooling on? The dominant narrative in the Western world especially is the kind of economic consumerist narrative. The purpose of schooling is to instill skills that create successful students that go to college, that develop these workplace skills, and then those students go into the workforce. And whether they're a chef or a lawyer or a heart surgeon or a bus driver, they contribute to the economy. And when the economy is strong, that's a good thing. And we grow the economy. And because the economy is strong, we can develop COVID vaccines and stuff. And that's what school is about, is creating an economic consumer that contributes to the economy and grows the economy. Now, that's the kind of the realistic, dominant narrative of what schooling is about, right? That you chose to become an educator, Vicky, in order to have a strong economy. Now,
no,
I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. And I've never heard an educator ever say that they chose this beautiful profession in order for America to have a strong economy. You chose this profession because you wanted to create individuals who are going to contribute meaningfully to creating a kinder, better world. We get into this profession because we love children. We want to help guide the next generation, right? That's why we got into this. What we end up with is a loss of that narrative. And we somehow adopt this dominant economic consumerist narrative to the point where an educator like me, who loved teaching, at the end of each school year, I would take my students, lock them in an examination hall, 200 of them. And what I would say to them is, all of those skills that we've learned about collaboration, creativity, trust, hope, especially empathy, all of those things, we've pretended are important. They're now called cheating, actually, for the next 2 hours, the pinnacle of your education career in year 12th grade, at the end of your school year. Don't talk to anyone, especially don't help anyone. You need to beat everybody else because you need to get into the Harvard so you can get the good score, you can get the good job, make money, make the economy big. So we have this conflict of narrative that we want teachers to be stopping and saying, hang on a second, why are we doing this? Why are we doing high stakes testing? Who does this serve? Does this really serve the narrative that you got into, Vicky, that you chose this profession for? Or have we succumbed to some other dominant narrative that exists? So we want teachers to debate this. We want teachers, educators around the world to just stop for a second and say, hang on a second. Why are we doing this SATs? Why are we doing this high stakes testing? Why are we grading kids? Who does this serve? And I think when we really reflect on the narrative, the why of education, we start to see that there's some conflict there. And hopefully we're seeing a shift actually in this narrative.
Yes, as long as I don't get a brain surgeon that cheated on his medical board.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a need for knowledge.
Absolutely.
But there's also a need for balance.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And certainly knowledge. And we love assessment. It's crucial, but not grade-based assessment. We need feedback for students. We absolutely need knowledge. Knowledge is the platform upon which we build skills. The last thing I want to say to you, Vicky, is the very first sentence in the book is education is not broken. 85-90% of everything we're doing in education is going well. It's highly successful. You look at any statistics, any numbers around the world, women's education, diversity, equity, inclusion, the amount of, education is highly successful overall. And there are some things we just need to tweak.
For sure. And you've given us a lot to debate about, for sure. The best-selling book is 10 Things Schools Get Wrong. David Bott, thank you for your time today. And I've got a lot to think about. Thanks, David.
Real pleasure. Thanks for all the work you're doing, Vicky. Appreciate it.
This summer, I'm taking my professional development with advancement courses. Recently, I shared the 5-step process I use to select the perfect course for me at advancement courses. Go to coolcatteacher.com/select. That's coolcatteacher.com/SELECT to see how I selected my course. Your professional development should be customized to your current needs and what will benefit your career. Advancement Courses makes it easy to pick a course so you don't have to stress out. The filters on their website are simple to use so you can find the perfect course for your grade level, subject area, or need. You can also use the coupon code COOL20, that's COOL 20, to get 20% off your course today. So go to coolcatteacher.com/select and begin picking out your courses today.
If you enjoyed today's 10-Minute Teacher podcast, why not subscribe on iTunes? You can also catch up with Vicky on Twitter at CoolCatTeacher or level up and learn with her blogs and free resources at coolcatteacher.com. Thanks for listening.